everyone to our digital roundtable brought to you today by Jensen Matthews PR, a strategic communication agency focused on emerging technologies and the future of money, in partnership with Finsight News. I'm your host, Maria Vovchok. I'm a journalist and professional MC at Tech Events. I'm so excited to be here. Today's virtual event will be focused on exploring the synergies between three powerhouses in the world of finance and technology: the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Hong Kong. This is a unique opportunity to delve into how these nations are shaping the future of global digital innovation, leveraging policy dialogues, strategic investments, and tech ecosystem integrations. Together, we will decode the synergies that can drive these industries forward, shape the future of finance, and unlock the new pathways to success in ever-evolving landscape of financial technologies. Today, we bring together experts, thought leaders, and visionaries from these three regions to share their insights on the pioneering collaboration between UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Hong Kong in the evolving landscape of fintech and digital assets. And I'm very excited to have here today with us Dr. Marwan Al-Zarouni, Chief Executive Officer at Dubai Blockchain Center. Dr. Marwan Al-Zarouni is also a strategic advisor at Dubai Department of Economy and Tourism. He's a prominent authority in the field of blockchain technology, an internationally recognized blockchain tech advocate, and a keynote speaker who has been ranked by Cointelegraph as one of the 100 top most influential people worldwide in blockchain. Dr. Marwan, welcome. We're very excited to have here Chen Arad, co-founder and CXO at Solidus Labs. Named by Citigroup, Solidus Labs category definer for crypto market surveillance, Solidus Labs offers Halo, the first comprehensive, testable, and automated crypto and DeFi native market integrity hub. Chen Arad is a winner of the New York Department of Financial Services Virtual Asset Supervision Tech Sprint. He's also founded the Solidus initiated annual digital asset compliance and market integrity forum. And he's also a member of the World Economic Forum's Digital Asset Task Force. Han, great to have you here today with us.
Thank you very much. And if I may, marhaba and nei hao.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. I'm so excited to have here an amazing lady. Please welcome Angelina Kwan, Managing Director at Stratford Finance. Angelina is also a Senior Advisor to IMC Asia Pacific, a leading global market making and proprietary trading firm. She has previously held senior management and directorate positions with international digital asset exchanges, HKEX, Cantor Fitzgerald, the SFC, and other global financial service companies. She is also the managing director of Stratford Finance Limited, a consulting company focused on dealing with regulatory and operational issues in the financial services and digital asset sectors. She advises brokerages, fund managers, technology providers. She is currently the chair of the Women's Foundation and serves on the number of Hong Kong government-appointed boards and charities. You just name a few. There's like a very long list. So Angelina, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you so much. It's great to meet all of you.
And last but not least, so happy to have here Ben Castling, VP and Chief Strategy Officer at MaskX. He's Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer at Dubai headquartered crypto exchange MaskX, focused on driving the mass adoption of Bitcoin and digital assets. He's also responsible for MaskX global expansion efforts across business development, marketing, and communication. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us today as well.
Okay, thank you very much, and happy to be here, everybody.
What would you like the audience to know about you from your experience that maybe I haven't mentioned in the intro? Who'd like to start? Ben, maybe you.
Sure, I can start with that. That's no problem. I think, first of all, it's great to see everybody. Some of you I've met recently again, so I'm very happy about that. Actually, most of my professional experience in the industry, in the crypto industry, is in Hong Kong. So, that starts with like the kind of early iterations of decentralized finance around remittances, stable coins, and even like kind of human rights platforms. So that's 4 years with AX in various leadership roles. I guess where I experienced up close the various changes in policy and also developments on the adoption front. And so actually, back then, AX was actually a serious innovator. We were the first exchange in the world to launch a market for Satoshis. This was followed by the likes of Bitfinex and OKCoin. We were integrated with Lightning Network, which we're seeing now with Binance and Coinbase. And at least a few months ahead of other very respectable exchanges in exploring the now very popular concept of Web3. I'll share more about that later on. It also collapsed completely. And so this has led to a kind of unique perspective that I unfortunately carry with me at all times. Now that I've joined MaskX, which only recently received the initial approval from VARA, we've set up our local entity under the DED, and we're currently in a very intriguing process of engaging the banks, so to speak. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to everybody's contributions.
Thank you so much. Angelina, let's hear it out from you. Like, what exactly, maybe something that I haven't mentioned about you that we definitely know that the audience should know about you.
Oh, God. As an ex-regulator many years ago, I never thought I would get into fintech until I was tasked with writing the guidelines for automated trading services. So for those of you who come from a traditional finance background, the ATS guidelines were the first, shall we say, blueprint for trading and for exchanges. And even now, it's still being used to get licenses. It forms a part of the structure for virtual asset service provider licenses, both in the United States as well as in Asia and especially in Hong Kong. So we have an ATS license in Hong Kong. Singapore copied us with the recognized market operator license. So I was very proud to be a part of that whole team to actually build that first step. But then afterwards, now we have a whole regime that's come in place in Hong Kong, which I'm so excited about because it's just basically turned around Hong Kong. And we are so excited in Hong Kong to welcome new licensees where licensing is fair. There's no quota. You will get a license if you comply. So it's fantastic. And in my case, though, I was one of the first, I guess they call them OGs now, original gangsters, who joined as the COO of BitMEX first and saw the growth with Arthur, Ben, and Sam. I then went on to become the group COO to get the license for HashKey, which is, of course, the second licensed firm in Hong Kong. So, and now I'm with one of the largest market makers in the world, working with market making and algorithmic trading. So it's still in the area that I love doing. And we even have a crypto arm too. So it's very exciting.
Thank you, Angelina. Dr. Marwan.
People know me, actually, who know me for more than 5 years, know that I was, before all this crypto stuff, I was in cybersecurity. And a lot of people don't know that I was actually one of the earliest people in the internet, actually, as well. So I started with domain name investment and building websites and things like that. So my first domain name was my first name as well, so marwan.com, but I got all of them, marwan.com, .net, .org, and a lot of the other extensions that came out. But when the Web3 domain names came out, I didn't jump in straight away because I saw a lot of other fads that came into the domain name, business, including Arabic, Chinese, and foreign language domain names that never took off. And I invested hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in these kind of different schemes, and only for them to die after a while. So I didn't think domain names in Web3 will take off, but apparently they are doing well right now, relatively speaking. So even with the down market of NFTs and the metaverse, slowing down, things like that. So I have a little bit of a FOMO of domain names in the Web3. So what I did, I started a conference here in Dubai called Domain Days, which is going to be in November 1st and 2nd, as my way of, combating this FOMO that I'm having. So that might be something that you don't know about me.
That's amazing. Actually, I was going to, I wanted you as well, actually, to mention about the event, Domain Days in UAE. So thank you so much. Han, please share with us as well some insights, some very maybe even personal information you would like the audience to know about you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And again, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'll start with since you've allowed it a personal comment. It's also quite touching for me. Both Hong Kong and the United Arab Emirates are places I feel a very strong personal connection for. I first visited Hong Kong in 2014. Angelina, I don't know if you'll believe me, it was as part of an internship with the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center. I'm originally from Israel.
Wow.
And it was just remarkable for me. Obviously just visiting Hong Kong was remarkable, and specifically this connection to the
Working on the museum.
Right.
How fabulous.
And I first had the opportunity to visit the United Arab Emirates more recently. And as an Israeli, every time I'm there, I cannot stop thinking about the fact that I never thought that in my lifetime I will get to visit Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And I stand there and I look at incredible things like the Burj Dubai, and I think to myself that this is an amazing, the Abraham Accords and the development and growth that comes with it is an example of what can happen when people think together, think creatively, focus on what can be done in the future, and in that way the world actually gets better. So really, really powerful. Very quickly, just from Solidus's perspective, Solidus has been is a company that helps crypto firms maintain the safety of their services and comply with regulation. Obviously, regulation is a loaded word in our industry, but the personal affection to both places really connects with my professional amazement with how forward-looking regulators have been on digital assets, both in the UAE and of course in Hong Kong. I'll never forget when the Hong Kong policy paper came out in 2019, some of the most innovative forward-looking approach, which of course now has jumped a few steps forward. And I will never stop being thankful for how welcoming and interested in learning and collaborating regulators have been in both Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So really, really wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much, Han. So let's jump to our questions because we have plenty of them, and I would definitely like to hear your insights on each of them. Let's start from how would you define the current fintech and Web3 landscapes in your respective countries? Dr. Marwan, I'll probably start with you. As far we are here in Dubai, and probably a lot of people are also really excited about the current regulations and everything that is happening in UAE.
Yeah, I think Ben mentioned earlier as well that he got in principle license from VARA, and I think this is the world's first independent, established for one purpose, which is virtual assets regulatory body, as in VARA being established in Dubai is a huge step. I think following in the footsteps of Hong Kong and working actually very closely with people from Hong Kong and Southeast Asia in general to really understand the regulations, how they did theirs, what were the things that can be improved upon, and looking at it from a fresh perspective, as in for crypto specifically, not having to really conform it to the traditional financing, ideas, creating a regulation and a regulatory body that is actually starting from the ground up. I think it's an amazing idea, and I think it's a bold idea from Dubai, and actually I think this is setting a precedence for people to follow, and also having the mindset of having regulations that are transportable and transitional to other jurisdiction is or passportable to other jurisdiction is extremely important. So for us, we have both kind of considerations, starting something catered specifically for virtual assets, at the same time not being in isolation from the whole world, because we are as this is the whole point of this session today, is we are not an isolated kind of entity or country or city. We are actually an entity that wants to work with others and be synergetic with others. And this is the whole point for us here in Dubai. And the landscape here in Dubai is always improving. Of course, a lot of the big projects have moved here. We've shown resilience as well. We've shown no kind of favoritism towards international or favorite kind of exchanges. We treat everybody the same. Nobody's above the law. And the regulations are there to protect both the consumers, but also provide a really good environment for the institutional investors to come in and have clarity over regulations, transparency over our controls and mechanisms for enforcing those regulations.
Yeah, right now I'd like to jump to Ben because he is at the same time right now, like he's Mascax crypto exchange is actually in UAE, but he has a long history as well in Hong Kong. So let's start from UAE, Ben. Let's continue, let's say, with UAE.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I think it's difficult for me to start from the UAE because I tend to look at things kind of in a historical trajectory. So if you don't mind, I would like to kind of cover a little bit of both.
We're talking about the current state and landscape, not like the history.
Sure. Not the history. All right. So, well, I think there is a little bit of a difference. Yes, I come at it from a Dubai/Hong Kong perspective. On the Dubai side, I would say, looking at Web3 in particular, so less fintech at large, but just Web3. What stands out to me there is a very great interest in the kind of stablecoin ecosystem. What stood out to me as well is a very really significant interest in gold-backed stablecoins. And I think it's driven by this kind of vision of futurism, which is something that Chen may have noticed looking at the Burj Khalifa and just generally the whole discourse around futurism. And I suspect that this also informs kind of the kind of Saudi Arabia ecosystem as well. But correct me if I'm wrong. To me, it's more reminiscent of Hong Kong longer ago, say where there was more kind of focus on innovation, rather than what I see, let's say, on the Hong Kong side, which is really more about the integration between legacy and Web3, which is slightly different. And so, the Web3 concept as such, I feel is not as alive in Dubai as I've experienced it in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, I would hear it in restaurants, on the streets, everywhere, just Web3 and NFTs. And of course, it's also a little bit in the context of the bull market, but I think this is a little bit of a difference between the two. Both are great, but there are slight differences. Yeah.
I think that Dr. Marwan would like to add here. Please do.
Have you been to Dubai Mall? Have you seen the NFT shops there? We have actually.
I have not seen the NFT shops. I'm too busy to be honest.
But give me your perspective after you visit them.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Let's do that.
I just wanted to add here that actually here also drivers are also like trading crypto. Like sometimes you can meet taxi drivers in Dubai who is also trading crypto.
Yes, to be honest, I distinguish a little bit between Web3 and when I talk about the digital asset space. So Web3 to me is quite a defined space, even though in Hong Kong it's used to cover a lot more. But for me, that's not the case. So when I talk about the digital assets industry at large, that is definitely alive and well in Dubai. And I've had similar conversations with taxi drivers who've noticed that I'm in a certain industry and they would ask me, hey, what should I trade? What should I do? But I do actually distinguish this from digital assets at large and the Web3, which is more of a confined vision of the kind of future of the internet.
Okay, thank you. I would like to jump right now to Angelina because she has actually mentioned how right now is Hong Kong again opening up to businesses, but I would like you again as well to describe in more detail what is the current Web3 and fintech landscape in Hong Kong.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say hello to Dr. Marwan and believe that he spoke to our group at Finiverse when we came to visit. And we came to visit you and we had such a great time. And we are so enthused to collaborate and cooperate with Dubai, UAE, and Saudi. So I can only hope that there will be more and more ties. And as VARA develops and as the SFC in Hong Kong develop, I'm hoping and speaking into small ears to to say maybe we should do more passporting together eventually so that the two economies can come closer together. So with that as just a backdrop, both places are really, really exciting now. And spending a whole week in a place that I've never been to before, I was basically floored. So it's been wonderful that everybody's coming back right now in terms of Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, what we've seen is from a change where retail was banned to now retail is now being embraced and allowed with certain guardrails in Hong Kong, a very clear licensing regime, as well as whole groups of new exciting investors, as well as companies coming into Hong Kong, looking at where do I come in terms of Web3? How do I actually embrace decentralization? What are new areas that we can move into? And you're seeing that, I won't say questioning, but you're seeing that exploration as well as venture capital coming in with companies coming up with new proposals for new exchanges, new clearinghouses that are decentralized that will serve other exchanges. You're seeing an excitement out there for venture capitalists to come in and hear different proposals coming to them. So it's really becoming a hotbed of, shall we say, a hotbed of investment as well as integration with accepting what Web3 is. The most common question was, what's Web3? What's Web2? And I think people finally now really understand the importance of how, well, we've had the success with Web2 where everything was centralized with large corporations. But now with decentralization, you're seeing the new possibilities out there that will actually vault digital assets, stable coins, and the next functions for whatever we develop out there. So what's happened is there are new groups that have started up like Web3 Harbor, as well as Web3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, new groups that have started to actually incubate and help investors as well as new companies coming into Hong Kong. And I think that excitement has been happening, and there's been a lot of traction in terms of conferences as well as, I know, investments because they're actually coming back and people are raising funds. And it was equally exciting when I was in the UAE because equally there are investors, the Emirati that we've met, the different venture capitalists that we met, they were really, really excited in terms of hearing what was happening in Hong Kong and also looking forward to visiting. And that's why one of the earlier questions that you had asked about was, how are the two countries working together? How is Saudi, UAE, and Dubai working with Hong Kong? And I think there's more and more closer cooperation. When our stock exchange CEO first started, he and the chairman first came to Saudi Arabia first, not the US, not other places. They came to Saudi first to visit and to establish relationships on financial services, as well as now digital assets. So I think there's such a wide place where Web3, 4, 5, 6 can actually be shared between, and it's just borderless. And I can only see Ben and Chen and Dr. Marwan coming over to Hong Kong, and likewise us coming over and just bridging all of that, because Web3 is decentralization. And more functions, more and more exchanges will be that. And we, meaning the regulators as well as ex-regulators of the world, need to be able to fashion a regulatory system that can deal with collaboration and cooperation. So I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but it's working together is the most important thing.
Thank you, Angelina. Actually, we will also talk about more about investment opportunities just a bit later on. I would also like to hear Hans' perspective, because he's actually based with his company in New York. He's right now at East Paris in Europe, but he's also working on business development in UAE region in Hong Kong, so in Asia in general. So Han, we would like also to hear your perspective regarding fintech, and you can also mention fintech and Web3 landscape.
Thank you very, very much, Maria. And it's just so fascinating to hear all of these insightful perspectives. As you mentioned, Solidus is a Wall Street-based firm, but we work globally. I am now in Paris. I'm going to Hong Kong next week. I was in the UAE last month, and I have no doubt we'll be there again very soon. Now, we, as you mentioned, Solidus focuses on preventing market manipulation and market abuse, and helping crypto firms to comply with regulation and raise market integrity standards. We have been very committed to, providing safe and regulated crypto and DeFi and increasingly Web3 opportunities, all the way back from 2018. And at the time, it wasn't very popular, in certain, in most of the world, to talk about crypto and regulation in one sentence. We have always advocated that crypto firms, regardless, crypto and blockchain firms, regardless, should do their best to try and comply with regulation. I have a good friend who is a former British regulator, and he always says that regulatory and clarity can be very frustrating for industry, but it's also an inevitable part of innovation. It's, there's always uncharted territory when you're creating something new. And it's also an opportunity to just do the right thing as well as you can, right? Even if it's not clear exactly how. All of that, being said, and from this perspective of also, being based in the US, where at the moment, we have to be frank, crypto regulation, the prospects of crypto regulation are quite frustrating for the industry. In Europe, there's a lot of progress and a lot of excitement, but as I mentioned earlier, already back in 2018, 2019, 2020, there was very, very innovative thinking coming from regulators, in the UAE and the Gulf, and of course in Hong Kong. And it was, I'm here in Paris now, and there's a lot of excitement, and that excitement reminds me of the kind of excitement that you could already feel in the UAE and the Gulf and in Hong Kong in 2019. So in that sense, I think you could compare, it's really amazing to see in both jurisdictions how regulatory clarity enables innovation, and how important it is for regulators to be ahead of the curve, and how when people have that confidence that even if not everything is clear, the local authorities, are receptive and work with the industry. And so that as long as you're trying to do right, you'll be good. And while there are other jurisdictions and in the United States, for example, there are quite a few firms who are frustrated because they've been trying to be regulated and now they're being enforced against. So just to summarize, in my, I always think about it, obviously there's always a dynamic in industry between incumbents and startups. In a way, that dynamic kind of transfers slightly differently on a geopolitical level. And specifically, Hong Kong and the UAE, are in a way have more of a have had a more of a startup mindset earlier on. All of that being said, I completely agree with you, Angelina. It's particularly important because it's driving regulatory innovation globally, and ultimately, Web3, crypto, DeFi, decentralized finance depend on the ability, over time, their growth will depend on the ability to have global cross-border frameworks. So in that sense, also the collaboration between the UAE and Hong Kong is fascinating. And I'll finish with that for now.
Thank you, Han. Actually, when you touched upon regulations, and I would like right now actually to everyone to comment on this. And could you as well provide the overview of the policy dialogues that are taking place between UAE, GCC region in general, and Hong Kong? Who would like to jump in here?
I can help on that one.
Yes.
There's a number of policy dialogues that are happening right now. Of course, the one that everybody seems to know about most is the CBDC, which is a joint venture between China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and UAE. So that has gone a little bit quiet, but it's still happening. And the HKMA has been very, very active in working on the e-Hong Kong dollar. Just recently, as recent as July 23rd, a number of groups from Hong Kong flew over to the UAE, and they announced and they signed what was called, I can barely read it, sorry about that. The economic and trade ties, and there was a trade agreement that was actually signed between the UAE and Hong Kong for innovation as well as financial technology. And Hong Kong has even set up an economic trade center within Dubai, as well as I believe they're going to also set one up in Saudi very soon. So there's a lot of work with the Ministry of Finance of the UAE. So Mr. Yunus signed this IPPA agreement, and I think you're just going to see more and more work together. And I mean, the first sign of this was, as I said, our HKEX CEO flew over first, as I said, not to the US, but to Saudi and to the UAE to actually start ties and to draw closer together as a part of a bigger area, to work together with a bigger area within the Middle East. So I think that's going to be very exciting. In terms of working with regulators, VARA has been super exciting. And many of my ex-colleagues, unfortunately, have left Hong Kong to join VARA.
I actually know some of them.
Yes. And you guys have picked up some really, really good and nice people who are very, very good at their jobs. I've met Ms. Deepa Carbon, who is an amazing woman, and Jensen also. So you've got a really great group here that's going to be working with our FinTech guidance group under Elizabeth Wong and Julia Leung, who is the CEO of Hong Kong. So I think the two sides will be working very closely together, as well as the monetary authorities will be working together. As you know, Hong Kong is going to start the stablecoin licensing regime. Next month, the stablecoin licensing will be coming out, and I'm sure there will be work with UAE, with Hong Kong in that area, because it'll be between HKMA and UAE. On the other side, I'm sure that VARA will work very closely with the SFC, because many of the licensees, including Ben, were either licensed in Hong Kong or going to get licensed in Hong Kong or going to get licensed with VARA. So there's going to be a lot of cross-pollination, which is great. And I think with the tokenization paper that's coming out, there's a new guideline that's coming out next month also from the SFC that will lay out the framework for tokenization and lay out the rules. And this is the area that most market participants have been most frustrated with, because there hasn't been a legal background behind it and a fostering community to help with tokenization. Now it'll be very clear, and I'm hoping that VARA and the SFC can work together, because of course the two regulators have the most regulated persons amongst themselves. And it'll be great that the two regulators are promulgating similar policies with each other, so that it can be cross-pollinated. So I think there's a lot of working together that will be coming up. And I think it's even greater that both VARA and Hong Kong are sharing people too and human resources. So I love it.
Thank you, Angelina.
The more friends to visit.
For sure. Let's jump to Dr. Moran. I think you have a lot to comment on this as well.
I'm going to keep it short, actually. So it's I think Angelina mentioned something very important, is not only a collaboration on the regulation, but also breaching this divide when it comes to mindset as well. I think having a different perspective from different place in the world brings a lot of value, and the best way to do that is actually human person-to-person interaction, spending time together. I think we've done that very successfully with the help of Finiverse as well, facilitating this meetup between the regulators, also facilitating people meeting each other in a casual kind of setting as well. So it doesn't have to be always like in a very formal setting. I think you learn more about people outside of meeting rooms than you do in meeting rooms. And you see the idea behind a certain kind of regulation or control or something like this much more clearly when you talk casually with the person. I think this is important. The human-to-human interaction is extremely important. Of course, we cannot jump into regulation by ourselves, not knowing all the history and background. And I think Ben raised a huge point by saying that you really need to talk about the history of how we reached to that point in order to, justify where you are right now and understanding how you can move forward. I think both of these are important, and I think events and meetings and literally traveling back and forth between the different regions is extremely important. And you said, I think, a good example of that is that you guys actually first visited the UAE and Saudi first before going to the US. And I think that sends a huge signal as well that we are very forward-looking. We are in sync on what our goals are. I think this is extremely important. Being focused on delivering and actually being focused on the outcome and the customers, actually targeting the right customers, targeting the right people, putting the framework that will attract the right kind of caliber of people and businesses to come in is extremely important. That's how you start the ecosystem. And once you have a very, positive, very kind of disciplined kind of ecosystem, this is the only way we really can have progress and innovation. If you have, a lot of bad actors in the region, but there's no regulations, no kind of clarity over the regulation, it's very hard to have progress. So that's my point. And I think it's extremely important, and what we are doing, not only in our own spheres, but also what impact it will have and what signal it will send to the rest of the world.
Thank you. Well, actually, as you mentioned, both of you, really precisely about this innovation corridor between Hong Kong and GCC, UAE in particular. We, and Angelina mentioned this as well, we can see a lot of promising investment opportunities taking place. I would like to, by the way, right now jump to Ben, because he's actually taking into account his experience, both living in Hong Kong, doing business in Hong Kong with a long of history, as he mentioned, and doing right now business in UAE, can also comment on this. So where do you see the most prominent investment opportunities, taking into account also your business activity?
All right, well, I'm always very cautious with any financial advice, as you can understand. Investment opportunities.
We're not in this case talking about how you're raising funds.
I understand.
We're talking about investment opportunities in general.
Sure. I preface myself at all times, though. But I think it's actually, I think I should place a larger comment, because we are looking at these two regions, but these two, or let's say these jurisdictions, but these jurisdictions do not operate in a vacuum from the kind of larger macro context, and we have to address that. So, because especially from my perspective, I look at the global expansion efforts driving the adoption of Bitcoin and digital assets globally, right? So
yeah, everybody wants that right now.
Of course. So I would say there are 2 points about this kind of macro context. Number one is, like it or not, what's happening in the US is very important to any policy formation and investment opportunities as well in this space. Not only because of its continued influence on global finance and various economies around the world. So this is not just a story about, let's say, the SEC and the continued battle, against the rise of this industry, particularly on the exchange front, but also with regards to, let's say, Bitcoin mining and capital gains taxes and these types of things. But also, let's say, developments in the industry need to be put against the backdrop of the continued pressure globally on the dominance of the US dollar. So, this creates tensions, perhaps some anxiety even, and also investment opportunities. So in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and Hong Kong, all of these jurisdictions, again, are tied up with this larger story. You look at the Hong Kong dollar, the AED, the Saudi Rial, they're all entangled with global finance and therefore intimately entangled with the dollar. So we have to bear that in mind when we talk about such investment opportunities. We should also not take lightly the recent filings of BlackRock, Fidelity, Cathie Wood's ARK Invest for the Bitcoin spot ETF. In fact, even in Europe, with Jacobi Asset Management, a very a good friend, we will see the launch of the first Bitcoin spot ETF in Europe as well, launched very soon. And so in that context, I would say, maybe one more thing. In that context, we also really do have to pay attention to what's happening in the US, again, on the election front. So it's pretty incredible to see all presidential candidates taking an explicit policy on Bitcoin, with Biden, very clearly kind of stemming the growth of the industry, and both R.F. Kennedy and on the Republican side, DeSantis taking a very pro-Bitcoin approach. I think that it's very fascinating, and we actually have to pay attention in the coming 18 months because it will affect the prospects of our respective jurisdictions as well. And so a second thing, and this is maybe more broad or less broad actually, I think Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, there's a definite push to diversify the economy and to build more strength against the economic pressures that we see everywhere, because inflation is everywhere. So in the Gulf, maybe it's more linked to like oil and these types of things. And in Hong Kong, it may be more connected to the greater Chinese economy at large. So yeah, this is kind of how I look at it. I think it's very healthy for the industry. I think the exchange business is not dead. Actually, we can see more regional consolidation. There is a hunger for liquidity. So if we can see this kind of ecosystem strengthen in the MENA region, and we see it strengthen in the APAC region, and recover in the US, and maybe come to life in Europe, actually, that's a pretty healthy way forward for the industry. So maybe it's not exactly what you hope in terms of investment opportunities, but yeah, I think the backdrop is quite important.
Thank you so much, Ben. Actually, you raised really maybe one of the major topics everybody's talking about, like mass adoption. Everybody was waiting for that and rooting for this. But when we're talking about like so awaited mass adoption, one of the most important things is to build trust, let's say, between regions, in this particular industry. When we're talking about your organizations, your companies, your activity, let's talk about trust building and in our sector. So in this case, this time I would like to jump to Han, because you're doing a lot of research with Solidus Labs regarding building trust for users in this sphere. Can you please share some of your latest insights? Because you're doing also amazing and interesting job as well.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing.
I can see that slightly.
Ben mentioned liquidity, which in our view, when we think about adoption and ultimately enabling more flows of funds into DeFi and crypto and Web3 opportunities, the way we think about it always is liquidity ultimately flows to safety, security, stability, and predictable risk, right? I mean, there's always risk, and this is also not investment advice, but there's always risk. The question is how predictable it is, and that often is kind of pegged to how effective regulation is, and how trustable the organizations are. So I think first of all, anytime I speak about some of the challenges when it comes to market integrity, market manipulation, market abuse in crypto and DeFi, it's really important for me to remind everyone that financial crime and these sort of issues were not invented by crypto. They still exist, unfortunately, at higher rates than I think most people realize in traditional finance. Digital assets is a new nascent industry. There's a lot of FOMO and buzz around it. We all have to remember the technology is still being battle tested in a lot of ways, and regulation is still evolving, meaning that naturally that triangle of factors creates new risks. Just to reference one piece of research we recently published, we looked at a group of major centralized crypto exchanges. And we found, using Solidus's DEX-based, decentralized exchange-based insider trading detection tool, that in more than 50% of cases, DeFi tokens that were listed on centralized crypto exchanges were accompanied by pretty compelling evidence of insider trading on decentralized exchanges. Now, again, insider trading happens in traditional assets as well, but at the end of the day, the advent of decentralized platforms is a game changer in terms of the ability of anyone who has any sort of access to information to unfairly, and if you compare it to the traditional world, illegally act with that information. And ultimately, markets that are not fair don't last. are not efficient and ultimately don't reach adoption. But there's another very important side to it that we always try to emphasize to regulators and the broader public in Wall Street. And that is that unlike in traditional finance, because the assets are decentralized, because it happens, yes, it's more open, it creates new risks, but at the same time, it also allows to identify these wrongful behaviors in an automated way the moment they happen. The same is true for fraud. For example, we published a report on rug pull scams, so hard-coded, essentially tokens that are hard-coded to allow people to invest in them and not allow them to get their money back ever. And again, it was concerning because we found out that, on average, every 4 minutes, there's a new scam token listed on the top 12 Ethereum virtual machine chains, so EVM chains. But at the same time, this is, I think, one of the first example of fraud that can be detected the moment someone tries to do it. Unlike in the traditional world, where at the end of the day, enough people had to be defrauded usually for it to be reported. So what I really want to emphasize here is that naturally there are new risks in innovation always. The question is, how do you create an environment, to your point, Doctor, that allows, that mitigates the risks, but does not impede the innovation? And I think that that's exactly where innovative regulation steps in. And I think, and I've mentioned already that in my personal view, and also based on our actual work with clients, both in Hong Kong and in the UAE and the Gulf, it's a game changer. And that forward-looking regulatory thinking is what enables this advancement of the potential through the mitigation of the risk. And again, that's part of why I'm really excited to be having this conversation with all of you.
Thank you, Han. Actually, thank you for sharing. I would like to as well, all of you, Ben, please share some successful stories maybe of cross-region trust building, building trust in this particular sphere that we're all in.
Cross-region trust building.
I would say Web3/fintech trust building in general. So let's be frank. Like in fintech, it seems like much easier to do right now. One of the challenges that Web3 is facing, as Hannah has also mentioned, is building trust among customers, so we can move towards the mass adoption everybody's talking about.
Okay, well, actually, I had this interesting because I had some notes prepared for this, but when you put it like that, I'd like to make it more personal. So you see, maybe let's say 3-4 years ago when I was with AX, I'm very passionate about this space and about what it could do for human beings around the world, and have put all my energy into that as well. And it's very interesting because when you are genuinely in the space, and I think everybody here is, genuine always wins, and scam loses. And I built a lot of trust actually with a lot of people across the world: Argentina, Turkey, Nigeria, Italy. People actually, I built up something that there was a lot of trust, and people were suffering from inflation. And you look now, Bitcoin has already reached all-time highs in Argentina, in Lebanon, Nigeria, Turkey. It's literally tracing all-time highs already because these currencies are failing. So I had spent a lot of energy building trust, and only to find myself in a situation where the company that I represented collapsed behind me, which is a pretty, I think very few people share that experience. And if they do, then they were probably responsible and in jail. So we can see that with SBF and Do Kwon, but very few share that experience. That is something that I unfortunately have. So I'm very cautious. So when it comes to building trust, look, you go to my Twitter, you go anywhere, you will always hear me talk about Bitcoin. I don't often talk about other tokens, even if they have all the promise in the world. I just know that, in the end, what we're talking about is not just fun and games or kind of, cool innovating. It's actually people are putting their savings, their hard-earned savings into this space, not just because they want to get rich quick, by the way. It's also out of necessity. It is also in a hunger for opportunity. And we need to remember that at all times. So when you mention trust, like, unfortunately, I cannot guarantee that for any organization that doesn't belong to me. That's just how it works in the world. So I work with MathCX. We do everything we do to build trust. We are building the headquarters. We are pursuing the license. We will be building out the ATM infrastructure. We do the events. We co-hosted the Viniverse and bring people together. But in the end, when you're on the stage or in front of the audience, you are there by yourself. It is you and you alone. And that is who you are. You know, I'm responsible to myself and to, let's say, to God. And that is how it is. So I look, when you mention trust, it is a very personal thing for me. And I trust myself. That's it. That's pretty much it. But in this space, luckily, we are building technologies that allow people to be trustless and to trust themselves. And so I like this, and I'm very passionate about it. And I think we should continue. And there will probably be a lot of dramas along the way. But I think that is the most fair and honest answer I can give you.
Thank you, Ben. Actually, one of the things that I also saw earlier, I think on your social media, that you spoke about MathCX's open door policy when your office is open. So can you please tell us more about that? Because it's pretty interesting. I haven't heard about this, like, let's say, from other exchanges so far.
Yeah, that is okay. That's a cool thing. I also liked it when I joined the exchange, the idea, and we are constructing the office. It's still like very sandy, and I do have a video walking around that office. It's quite big, actually. It's in the Mashrek building, which is in downtown Dubai, next to the Dubai Mall. And yes, the idea is that while you have the area where the staff is at work, you also have the public kind of, just like a banking branch, you do have a public area where people can come in and onboard and use the ATM machine, kind of do in-person KYC if they want, and maybe have a conversation. We're building out fiat infrastructure as well. So the idea would be you can also just open up a whole, a bank account with us, and a digital assets account. So you have that perfect fluidity and liquidity between accounts. And then in addition to that, it's kind of the idea that we would, this is the hope that we would be able to, just like when you're in Dubai Mall, you will see these little branches of Mashrek, and you can go inside and take out your money from the ATM. It'd be wonderful if exchanges, even maybe decentralized exchanges, who knows, can find kind of even brick and mortar presence in our cities, in our markets. And in Dubai, that would be really awesome if we could drive that. I know in Hong Kong, there is already a very strong ATM infrastructure for years already, by the way, but it went from the kind of dodgy corners of like, dusty buildings to, and literally laundromats to, and this is something that Chen will laugh, but, the laundry places to actually, kind of prominent places where you can find the ATMs. And if you go to Turkey, for example, everywhere there are just these shops where you can easily interact between fiat and crypto. Although in Turkey, it's from the Turkish lira to the US dollar, from the US dollar to USDT. But you go to other places, and I have to kind of make it a bit broad. You go to Vietnam, the way to do it there is you kind of go into a jewelry shop. And you're like, hey, can I buy some USDT? And it's like, so you can see the different, stages across the world, actually, of how this infrastructure is unfolding. I find it very fascinating.
Thank you, Ben. Dr. Mervan.
Funny you should mention that. One of my first businesses was actually ATMs. And the reason I stopped that business, at least stopped the ATMs, is the user experience. A lot of the ATM manufacturers at that time were really bad and user interface, and the machines would break all the time. And I didn't want to give people the wrong user experience, and that's why I stopped. I think that has come a long way, and I think it's a good time to re-bring that back. The brick and mortar, I think, is extremely important, not only for the user experience itself, but also for trust. When you have a bank branch versus a digital bank, I think we're doing a full loop right now, going back to digital banks and things like that. But I think still a combination of both is the way forward. I don't think one over the other is the way to go. And I think it comes down to this, open doors, transparency, having a place where you can go to if there's a problem, rather than, just being hanging out in the air and waiting for an email or a response from the customer service. So I think all of these things add up, and environmental factor, like you mentioned, like having an ATM in a dusty corner versus a main building in the city or in the bank street or something like this, is totally sends totally different message about how mature this kind of offering is. So I think trust is the perspective. Again, you could have all the trust in the world when nothing bad happens, but when things start going the wrong way, one incident can change your world perspective. And I think this is extremely important to highlight as well. It's not the environment that dictates whether you're going to have good trust or not. It's also your personal experience. So in Dubai, everything revolves around personal experience. And we always want people coming here and doing business here to have a really good, personal experience that translate to trust transparently, actually, rather than us portraying that there's trust. So I think this is a really good focus for us here in Dubai, and I think this translates, and it's universal actually, the concept of to do good business. You have to have good ethics, and you have to have good user experience as well, because the difference between user experience and not trusting is very thin. So imagine a scenario where you send somebody crypto and wait 20 minutes to get it back. That 20 minutes, imagine the mindset of that guy. So user experience is a little bit tied to trust as well.
Thank you, Angelina.
So ultimately, trust comes from a industry that was very nascent in as early as 2013. And growing to 2018 in the heydays of ICOs and digital assets, and people were wrecked as well as throwing money around. But what you're seeing now with regulation coming in place, with traditional finance moving into the digital asset space, and the original OGs actually realizing, oh, hey, I can't survive as just being an OG that doesn't actually start having a customer-centric focus. And I think as digital assets, as well as Web3 starts to develop more and grows more, you're going to see emerging of traditional finance moving into with the tech and as well as the digital asset geeks and OGs that we are together. And from that, you're going to see a melding together of both innovation as well as customer-centric focus. And you're slowly seeing that grow now. And as these big cases like FTX come out, there are so many lessons learned about that investors need to learn to be careful. I spend most of my time talking to whoever will listen to me about, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So don't invest in it. If you don't know what you're investing in, don't buy it. Go learn. If you don't know what the token is, if there's no documentation about it, or if it's not been approved by a regulator, then you know what? Don't buy it until you've done your proper due diligence. And that is all we as responsible market participants, and I know everybody on this panel is promulgating that. And I think that's going to be really, really important, because that's the only way that this industry will grow. If we had another FTX happen, it will just set us back again. And we have just gotten over the FTX effect to where it's now, okay, we're going to grow again. We're going to take care of our customers. We're going to be licensed. And customers will know that we are there for them as their digital asset provider, as their Web3 provider, providing services that actually mean something that will help them as they invest or as they use technology for innovation as well as learning. So I can only ask that everybody in our industry, if you really want to see this succeed, it starts with you. And it comes from being honest and being customer focused and doing the right thing. And that's ultimately the same for traditional finance as well as now for digital assets. And yeah, I can only say that's the most important thing going forward. And it's the same in the UAE, in Hong Kong, and around the world, wherever you are. So
thank you.
I'll end with that one.
Thank you so much, Angelina. Here, I would like to focus as far as we're moving closer to the end of our today's panel discussion. All of you actually mentioned, and I really also appreciate our event that we did together. We did with Finiverse, actually Jensen, Matthew's PR, Mask Acts. We did it with the support of the Dubai Blockchain Center in the Museum of the Future. So everybody was there, and Han was there.
I had the opportunity to be there as well.
So one of the ideas to build these bridges between UAE and Hong Kong.
Yes.
What do you see with this, making this bridge working more, let's say, closer collaboration between HK and GCC Web3 ecosystem? What challenges and what at the same time opportunities do you see? Angelina.
Challenges. I think the challenges are really being overcome because the governments are working together. So now it's just the business people working together and exploring what opportunities are out there together. And that will entail with people flying over to either side, as well as great conferences and people like yourself that actually put all of us together. And you know what, I'm going to talk to Chen and Ben after this. And when they come to Hong Kong, I'm going to make sure I have a drink with them, either be it coffee or a drink. And we will get to know each other and we will introduce opportunities to each other. And that's one of the things that I found when I came to the Middle East. I really found that people were really open to talking about how can we collaborate? How can we cooperate? How can we do things together to build a better tomorrow? And that was the most exciting part of that Finiverse conference, of seeing, wow, that UAE and all the countries in the Middle East have just been moving forward so quickly to embrace digital assets and to embrace Web3. It was packed in Dubai. It was packed in UAE at every single conference. And we can only see the same thing happening in Asia. It was packed in Singapore and it was packed in Hong Kong. So now we just need to collaborate and cooperate and just have more investment opportunities where we can work together, trust each other, and build a better, the next phase of Web3.
Thank you. Dr. Marwan, your ideas.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's just a matter of taking the opportunity right now. I think there will be a momentum shift and a sentiment shift as well towards crypto as well. There's a lot of announcements coming up from a lot of the big financial institutions. We saw the ETFs. We've seen a sentiment change from the banking industry as well with their announcement and how much they're allowing banks to actually have and their reserves when it comes to crypto. So I think that will drive a little bit of a sentiment change. And I think unless we have some catastrophic event like whether it is on the political side or economic side or even health, like we've seen with COVID, then I think the path is set forward for this industry to grow. I think that tokenomics for Bitcoin with the scarcity and halving and all the stuff also would play a huge role in pushing the price forward. Will change the sentiment as well. So I think there's not a lot of challenges except the outliers that might happen that we don't know about. But all things taken into consideration, I think the road ahead is much more positive than a lot of people perceive.
Thank you, Dr. Marwan. Ken.
So, I'll segue.
You've been there.
No, of course. I'll segue from your question about trust to this really, really important and, in my personal view, inspiring effort. And I love this term, this innovation corridor. So, part of the reason that and excuse me for a second, just referencing Europe, but part of the reason that MiCA, the Markets in Crypto Asset Regulation that has just been passed year's legislation, is so interesting for the crypto and DeFi and Web3 industry, is that it's ultimately a cross-border regulatory framework, right? Because the European Union inherently is a cross-border regime. However, it's most countries in the world are not part of a union of that sort to that degree, and the ability of individual countries to also, build frameworks that create trust is really important. The way I think about, trust, risk monitoring, compliance, and in our industry, I like to think about about decentralized technology as a sort of autonomous car, right? Now, how fast any car can go depends not only on how big the engine is, but just as much on how good the brakes are, because the engine is useless if you don't know for sure that if something happens, to your point, Dr. Al-Zaruni, if something happens, you want to know that there are systems in place that can allow to address it in a constructive way, right? Because otherwise, things are just too risky. And one of the most important ways to do that, one of the ways for most of us, and I think maybe the only way for us to trust the brakes in any car is know that there's, a regulatory authority that we trust that, have kind of approved that they work. Now, can you imagine building an autonomous car that can only work in one country? Because, in other countries, like there isn't enough trust in it. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a really big challenge to build, trust that is unified across countries. And, this work towards innovation corridor, I think, is a really exciting example for an effort. And I obviously am thinking about it from the perspective of crypto and Web3, but it's true for fintech and, innovation and growth in general is a really important effort to do that, which I think is quite effective again. And I'm saying this based on the amount of business that we're seeing, in both of these places. So, the brakes are as important as the engine, and they enable the trust, and doing it in a cross-border way is really, really important, and that's part of why I'm excited about this.
Thank you, Han. Ben.
Yeah, interesting. I still, I work for the UAE, but I kind of live in Hong Kong. At least that's how I see it. For me, Hong Kong is kind of home. So I do kind of go back and forth. Yeah, it's just how it is. But I do, so I paddle back and forth a lot. And as part of that, I do some advisory for some Hong Kong projects that I can't really share about, but it's quite exciting. And it's intimately tied to Dubai, by the way. It's not just kind of Hong Kong on its own. There are these collaborations taking place and unfolding. But when it comes to challenges, I don't really know about kind of the challenges. Challenges in the corridor maybe is not something that I have something to say about. I think there is a delicate balance for each jurisdiction vis-a-vis other larger jurisdictions. That is a very complicated balance that they themselves need to achieve, whether it's on Hong Kong vis-a-vis the larger ecosystem there, the larger region, or the UAE and the US. I think it is something that's quite significant. So okay, that's something, but not really something we want to elaborate on. But more locally, look, MaskX has just received the initial approval, and as part of that, we have to engage the banks. So again, I mean, this is a little bit of a political speech, but it's not really appropriate to share which banks we spoke to and who. But you could say like most of the top banks, most of the top leadership at the top banks. And while the conversations are very productive and very welcoming and kind, it is not that easy, even with the support of Avara or even in Hong Kong with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, kind of having to push the banks to integrate with, to service the exchanges. It's not so easy actually, because it's just not that easy. There's a lot of entanglement in the global economy that it takes time to kind of navigate that. And I can notice that on the ground. It's easier to work with the smaller regional banks than it is to work with the behemoths of finance for very obvious reasons. So I think that is something that is still going to take some time, even if there is government support and even if there is, a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. Legacy is still a dinosaur that moves at a different pace than what we can see in the kind of crypto space. And that may be good, just like in the crypto space, Bitcoin and its slowness has there's a good reason for that, and it's good. But that is something that we should just bear in mind. So I think for me, the main message, what I'm trying to say is that looking at any of these challenges, we cannot look at it in a vacuum. This is one world, and it's pretty much entangled everywhere. Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Actually,
Maria,
my last.
can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Ben's absolutely right. But one of the things we have to do as market participants is we have to help them help themselves. Them meaning regulators, governments. In the beginning in Hong Kong, the regulators didn't even know how much trouble we were having in terms of getting bank. They had no idea about the insurance and the lack of insurance and the lack of the fact that we couldn't get insurance. So I think the industry together, through forums such as Finiverse, through forums that Dr. Marwin is going to throw in terms of the domain area, I can see ICANN being a part of that in terms of the patenting and intellectual property areas of this. It's us that are actually responsible to work with regulators, governments, and market participants to push a whole new area out and teach them. This is the whole thing. And we get frustrated sometimes with governments as well as banks and things like that. But I have to tell you, have you talked to a banker that works in traditional banking? They have no idea what you're talking about. And it's going to take them months before they even understand how to transfer a coin from point A to point B, and that it takes, 20 seconds and costs, nothing compared to $40 transfer. And that's shaking their entire cost base as well as how they make money. So it's going to come with time, but we as market participants need to be really patient, and we need to actually keep applying pressure. And it starts with having an understanding between regulators, governments, and market participants together to work together to make this all happen and to teach regular industry as well as the regulators and governments about this. I think governments at least understand now. So let's move forward now and help them grow, help them help themselves. So it's just something.
Thank you. Thank you. And Angelina, really, I really liked how you actually added here. And to wrap it up, just last question, because here we have a team of visionaries. The thing is that you learn already because you were like trailblazers in this case, and you were like not afraid to learn something new. I'm sure that our audience would be like thrilled to find out what exactly additionally are you learning in terms of tech trends or something else. So which future trends are you seeing? And can you be here in this case more specific that I believe that all of our audience should also look at from your perspective? Angelina.
I did something unusual last year where I could have gone to Token 2049, where I knew everybody and could have had a great time with F1. But what I did was I challenged myself and I went to a conference in New York. I knew one guy there who actually I used to work with, and I went to the Chainlink conference because I wanted to learn as much as I could about Web3. Because at that time, everybody was talking about Web3, but I've never seen it in action. So with the Chainlink conference, I learned about what were called oracles, how oracles worked, how decentralization and how they had built these chains for different founders to actually put in their killer app into it. And they were helping to grow the ecosystems because they were decentralized through these different oracles. And through that, by challenging myself to go to a conference where I didn't know anybody, I got to meet a lot of people. And turns out that some people actually I did know, and they were moving into new areas. So the one thing I would say is for everybody, challenge yourself and go do something that's not like everybody else. Go to a different area, go to a different part, or learn something new every day to challenge yourself, which is what I try to do every day, and learn about new products, services, or whatever it happens to be. And I subscribe to everything under the sun, from Cointelegraph all the way to Block, you name it. And I will talk to people and ask questions until I understand. So I would really challenge everyone here, as well as all our viewers, to really do that and do something out of your comfort zone, because that basically is something out of your comfort zone is crypto. and you'll find that you have a really good.
Thank you so much, Angelina. Han.
Well, first of all, I just really second what you just said, Angelina. And, to me, it connects to the point I made earlier about regulatory clarity. Growth and innovation always happens out of the comfort zone. And the question is, how do you create enough guardrails around it so that there's also mitigated risk? One thing that I try to remind myself always is that, if blockchain-based finance and other kinds of products are the new internet, we're still in the early 90s. All it takes, to kind of get some perspective is to watch Bill Gates' interview in 1994 with David Letterman, where, this billionaire who basically invented personal computers and probably one of the only people who understood the internet then is trying to explain why does it make sense to create a new form of communication? And he says things like, you can go online to learn about your interesting things. And David Letterman challenges him back, well, have you heard about magazines? And today it sounds really, really funny because the value of this underlying infrastructure of everything we do, the internet, right, is so clear to everyone. And I think that it's still very, even people like us who are deeply involved and are already out of our comfort zone deep in this, it's really important to remember that we're in the very beginning, and to also quote Bill Gates that, we tend as humans to overestimate what can be done in a year and underestimate what can be done in 10 years. So what I'm saying is, if when you're looking at trends, you're thinking mostly about the price of Bitcoin, you're not thinking about this industry, in the right way, and you're definitely not out of your comfort zone enough. So we're at the very beginning, and I'm very excited to be, a part of this effort, shoulder to shoulder with, as you said, Maria, so many great visionaries.
Thank you, Han. Ben.
What's the exact question?
The last question, very short one. What future trends we should look into? You can be even more specific. Let's say, not talking about everybody's right now talking about AI, but can you be let's say, specify on some specific future trends we should look into?
I mean, of course, AI, but yes, no. What I really, really deeply believe is it's difficult because this industry, while it's growing fast, and maybe because it's growing fast, it's also become very politicized. So there's a lot of different voices saying different things. It's quite noisy, actually. But let's say, through all the noise and all the kind of distractions, my view eventually is humanity is, first of all, still digitalizing, and secondly, should explore what it means to self-custody. I think in the end, this is really one of the most important things. So yes, I celebrate BlackRock's filing for the ETF, but I've written about this in Cointelegraph. You can look it up. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bullish for Bitcoin. Yes, price may go up, but what Bitcoin is about is a culture of self-custody and not getting exposure to price action, but not being able to enjoy the benefits of actually what Bitcoin was about and what it is still about, by the way. And the same with, I can see the same news in Hong Kong, people could buy Bitcoin through HSBC. I celebrate all of it, but we should, don't lose track of what this is really about. And I believe it is about self-custody. Now, self-custody is difficult. My mom does not self-custody. So because that's the truth, it probably means most mothers don't self-custody. It's kind of that's still an issue. That we haven't yet really grasped what it means to self-custody. And we can build companies, and maybe they are 3FA companies, they help you, but they can't touch your money. There's a lot of things that we can explore. DeFi is on the fringes still, really. But to me, this is the most long-term, important, significant trend that may benefit humanity intergenerationally. Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Dr. Marwan.
For me, it's always about education. So like you mentioned, your mother or grandmother or any elderly person trying to understand this emerging tech, and let alone how to transfer or receive crypto from a wallet, let alone understanding metaverse on top of that, and NFTs within the metaverse, and then all of that. It's a huge, big bite to eat actually, or swallow, and it's really my mission in life is actually to make it easier for people to understand the tech, understand the value from the tech. And the second thing is, I always look at inefficiencies. I would like to make people's life easier, and if you find something that actually makes people's life frictionless or less friction than before, that you actually change their lives dramatically. And I think focus around education, focus around removing inefficiencies, focus around frictionless kind of experience for a person. It all adds up to a really good kind of perception of the world, and easier. And even your mental health becomes much easier. If it's easy for you to do custody, that's a huge thing. If it's easy for you to transact, better than traditional banks and traditional, remittance, it's much easier. So anything that I can do or we can do in collaboration that helps us deliver a good value with a good product for the masses in a good kind of a risk atmosphere is what sums up this whole, reason we are here, and even in this session. So I think this is important, and all of these things are important.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that our audience.
Could I add in one point?
Yeah.
I think I agree with everyone speaking here, but I would like to add one thing. Women make up 20 to 30% in digital assets and fintech. Where I'd like to see the world go is where young girls and women are encouraged to go into fintech, that there are no societal factors that impede them, so that we can actually break down the barriers so that men and women can work together to grow and to collaborate and make this an amazing product that's equal for all men and women. And it's not just for boys, it's not just for guys, it's for men and women. And that's what fintech and tech brings: freedom, and freedom for savings, freedom for working, and freedom to actually be able to have children, care for children, and maybe the guys should also be taking care of those kids too. So I'd like to end with that point, and hopefully we have an equal society where fintech breaks down those barriers.
Thank you so much, Angelina. I'm sure that I really hope that our audience has learned a lot. Thank you so much for this women empowerment point at the end. Now, once again, thanks everyone for joining our hopefully insightful and exciting webinar for you, brought to you by Jensen Matthews PR. I was your host, Maria Vovchok. I'm MC at Tech Events and journalist. I'm so excited to have with us today amazing panelists: Dr. Marwan Al-Zaruni, CEO at Dubai Blockchain Center, Angelina Kwan, Managing Director at Stratford Finance, Ben Castling, VP and Chief Strategy Officer at MaskX, and of course, Chen Arad, co-founder and CXO at Solidus Labs. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you, Maria, for being the best hostess.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.